Good morning, friends. Chirasi proudly presents in our All About Banking series, Part 4 Bank Safe Deposit Lockers. Safe Deposit Locker service is one of the very important services extended by the public sector banks for the convenience of the customers to keep their articles under safe custody. Recently, based on the observations of the Honorable Supreme Court, Reserve Bank of India issued detailed guidelines on safe deposit lockers of banks on 18th August 2021 and advised all the banks to devise a policy guideline duly approved by their board, incorporating and ensuring the following guidelines. So, based on the revised guidelines, which are operative from 1st of January 2022, the safe deposit lockers of banks need to comply with the following guidelines. In this series, we shall now focus on three important areas. One is opening of lockers, number 2, operation of the lockers, and number 3, termination of the lockers. Before we go deep into this locker, let us first understand the fundamental difference between a safe deposit locker and safe custody of articles. In respect of safe deposit locker, only a small portion of the locker is given to the bearer for a specified period after collecting necessary rent for the locker. The very important concept is bankers do not know what is kept inside the locker, or they do not keep track of what is taken out of the lockers. That means, just like in any tenant of a house, what is kept inside or what is taken outside or taken out from the locker, bankers are not aware. Whereas, in respect of safe custody of articles, the cover is sealed in the presence of the bank managers and it is in the safe custody of the bank. Amongst various units, a space in the locker is alone given to the bearer for a particular period. So, in this part, we shall cover in three important portions. One is opening of lockers, number 2, operations, number 3, closure and settlement. Now, in the case of opening of lockers, who are all eligible? Earlier, only the customers of the banks were given locker facilities. As per the revised guidelines, effective from 1/1/2022, is applicable for the existing customers as well as new customers also. As per the existing customers are concerned, all the existing customers has to once again enter into a new locker agreement, and this exercise has to be completed before 1/1/2023. That means 1 year time has been given for the existing customers or the existing locker bearers to execute this locker new and revised locker agreement. In the case of opening of an account, basically it is an agreement executed on a non-judicial stamp paper satisfying the conditions under the Contract Act. So it is basically an agreement, and in this agreement all the clauses which we are going to discuss will also be incorporated. And it is basically the responsibility of the bearer to give an undertaking that they will not use the locker for any illegal activities or for storing any explosive or chemical or hazardous subjects inside. If the bank comes to know that they have violated these conditions, it is full liberty is given to the banks to initiate appropriate action as they deemed fit. So, this revised agreement has to be executed by all the locker bearers, existing locker bearers on or before 1/1/2023. In respect of new locker bearers, even though they do not have any banking relationship with the bank, yet they can also submit their applications for the locker if they satisfy the customer due diligence as prescribed under Know Your Customer norms. If there is any vacancy, banks will allot immediately. In case there is no vacancy, a common vacancy list as per all the banks will be prepared in the core system and their application will be waitlisted, and as soon as a vacant locker is available, they will be allotted. So it is a system very transparent in nature, and some of the very important documents for customer due diligence is number one, Aadhaar card. In India, Aadhaar card is considered as one of the very important documents where even the genuineness of the Aadhaar card can be verified for date of birth and the last known address. So, this Aadhaar card, passport, ration card or voter's ID can be used as identification purposes and for correspondence. But amongst all the documents, Aadhaar card is considered as favorable to many institutions because there is a system for verification and confirmation. And for the new lockers, this agreement, if it is allotted, they can execute the locker agreement immediately, or otherwise for the existing customers, the new agreement has to be signed by them on or before 1/1/2023. Number 2, rent in advance. Many banks have expressed their difficulties in collecting the periodical rent. So in these revised guidelines, banks are permitted to take 3 years rent as advance in the form of term deposit, so that when a customer gives 3 years rent in advance, they also get the applicable interest on the amount deposited for 3 years. So term deposit for 3 years rent can only be insisted by banks as a form of term deposit. If any amount in excess, if it is insisted, it is considered as a restrictive trade practices. And periodically, bank can insist for service 1 year in advance. They can get the interest periodically 1 year in advance, and 3 years advance will be kept as term deposits. Locker can be opened in individual names or in 2 or 3 people or 2 or more people in joint accounts. In the case of joint accounts, as we all aware, the mandate can be either jointly, or that means all the people should sign, or either or survivor or anyone or survivor or farmer or sign. Whatever be the type of mandate, the implications of this we have already discussed all about banking in part 2. We have discussed elaborately about the mandate. One is regarding nomination. All these lockers can also have a nomination registered. So in the event of an unfortunate death to the bearer, the contents in the locker can be handed over to the nominee. Please remember, nominee is only a trustee as per the Nomination Act. They are responsible for the legal heirs. The rights of the legal heirs are not taken away, but only the contents inside the locker are handed over to the nominee. The nomination facility is discussed in our part 1 of the All Banking in the YouTube channel Rajendran Sivarama Pillai. Now we come to the second important part, that is operation of the locker. Number 1, very important, is at the time of visit, the locker heir should sign a register indicating the date, time of operation along with their mobile number, registered mobile number, so that banks can send a message that the locker has been operated on that particular day. Similarly, when the operation is completed, again in the same register, the time of closure of the locker should also be indicated so that it becomes a record, permanent record, indicating who has operated the locker, on what date, at what time, and how long they operated the locker. The next important thing is number of visits. In those days, earlier, there was no restrictions on the number of visits. This facility was misused by few customers in residential areas. Wherever residential areas, bank branches were located, location where it was in the ground floor of the residential cooperative housing society, consisting of some elite families of 30-40 elite families. 2 or 3 who always used to go out every day, almost every day. They used to come 2 to 4 times in a day for opening the locker, keeping something, taking out, and this was causing lot of inconvenience for other customers also. So now a restrictive clause has been incorporated in some of these banks. That means they permit 2 or 3 or 4 operations in a month without any charges, but in excess of an average 2 to 3 operations in a month, if it exceeds that limit in a year, then for every visit subsequently they may take a charge of 25 to 50 rupees as the case may be. This varies from bank to bank. So there are number of visits also. There has been restrictions as approved by the respective board. The third is regular payment of rent. Rent is normally collected once in a year in advance. So proper instruction has to be given to the bank to recover the amount from a particular account, from a particular branch, or whatever may be as deemed fit. Security and safety of the locker. Number 1, the safety of key. Every key given by the bank will have the bank code and prescribed norms as prescribed incorporated in the key. One unique feature is every locker has got only one key. There is no duplicate key in the concept of safe deposit lockers. There are 2 keys. One is the master key, which will open all the lockers, and that is in the custody of the bank. And number 2 is the key given to the locker bearers. This key is a unique key, and only when the first master key is opened, the second key by the customer open the locker. Without these 2 keys, lockers cannot be opened under any circumstances. Some of the lockers will also have an additional padlock, so that if required, the customers can put their own locks also as additional safety. So it is absolutely necessary that under no circumstances a duplicate of the bank key should be prepared, because banks will strictly ensure that they permit only the keys supplied by the banks to open the locker. As soon as the master key is inserted and it is released, the bank officials will leave the locker room to ensure that the locker bearer has his privacy completely ensured 100% so that no one knows what is kept inside or what is taken outside. Number 2, in case the locker key is lost due to some reason or other, it is necessary that the bearer should inform the bank immediately. On the receipt of the information from the bearer that the key has been lost, the only course of action that is available for the banker is to break open the lock and replace the lock by the authorized representative of the company who has supplied the safe deposit lock. So there is no second key or there is no duplicate key and there is no question of getting another key without breaking open the locker. At the time of break open on a fixed day after getting the availability of the customer service personnel from the concerned company, bank will inform the date and time of opening, and at that time the bank official and the customer and the representative will be present, and the moment it is opened, the lock will be replaced and the customer will be provided another key. The necessary expenses in this record will be recovered from the account of the customer. The second type is shifting of branch. Whenever a branch is shifted or closed or merged with the subsequent bank branch, there might be some necessity to shift the locker units while vacating the premises. At that time, the customers will be informed 2 months in advance to the address as provided in the agreement form, and they will be permitted to either close the locker or they can remove the contents so that the locker could be shifted easily without any damage to the articles or items kept inside. Third, sometimes in a hurry, the locker bearer may forget to close the locker unit properly. It should be understood that while for opening the locker, bank has to open with the master key. For closer, bank officials need not be present. So, it is the full and only responsibility of the bearer to close the locker properly. In case if the locker is not closed properly, subsequently, if the bank officials come to know that a particular locker has not been closed properly, it is their responsibility to close it immediately and inform the locker bearers through SMS or through email or through telephone, and then it is their responsibility to come and ensure that whatever they have kept inside is safe. As a routine function also, every day the bank officials also ensure that the lockers permitted to open during the day are closed properly so that safety is ensured for all the locker bearers. Number 4 is non-payment of rent. If a rent is not paid for 3 continuous years, then the bankers have got the option to break open the locker. Before that, they need to comply with the prescribed procedures. The prescribed procedures are a registered notice with acknowledgement is issued to the locker bearer, advising them to clear all the dues immediately. Number 2 is, in case if the letter is undelivered and returned, it is preserved with the documents as a proof of evidence, and also the intention of the bank to break open the locker is also published in newspapers. Number one in English and another in the local language, so that the customers are given sufficient notice and time that the locker is going to be opened by breaking the lock because of the non-payment of rent. They have got a particular lien on the items kept inside, so that can be disposed in open auction and the rent can be recovered, or the customers on payment of the rent, they can hand over the articles kept inside. The fifth condition is when a locker is not operated for more than 7 years, even though rent has been paid regularly from the account, if the locker is not operated for more than 7 years continuously, then also bankers have got rights to open the locker. It is to be remembered very clearly that only circumstances bank branches are permitted to break open the lockers. Number one, at the request of the customer or hearer due to loss of the key handed over by the bank branch, or when an order is received through the court for attaching the locker contents by any government agencies. In that case, a notice will be issued to the locker hearer that order has been received by the court, by the competent authorities, and banks will be opening the locker on a particular day and request their presence and the key for opening the locker, or otherwise it will be opened by breaking the locker. Number 3, on termination of the locker agreement and the key has been given to the bank. Please remember, the moment a locker is surrendered, the lock of that particular unit will be exchanged with other vacant lockers available with the branch. This means 1 or 2 lockers will be always kept vacant for these purposes, so that the key for a particular unit will not remain the same after it is surrendered. When the locker rent is not paid for more than 3 years, or if the locker is not operative for more than 7 years and the customer is not traceable, in such conditions also the locker will be opened with 2 bank officials and 2 independent witnesses. The contents inside will be taken out. It will be proper inventory will be taken, and it will be kept in a closed and sealed cover, and it will be kept in safe custody of the branch, so that the legal heirs can claim it later on after satisfying the bank. Now comes the important aspect of security, and it is ensured bank branches that there is only one entrance to the locker room. The people who are going inside the locker room, it is completely covered by CCTV. Now, if the loss is due to natural calamities, theft, or due to negligence of the staff, the question of compensation arises. As per the revised policy guidelines, if any loss occurs to the hearer due to reasons in their own conduct, then banks are not responsible for any compensation. But in spite of taking all the precautions, if any theft or robberies or negligence of the staff occurs, or natural calamities, and if there is any damage, the locker hearers are compensated to the extent of 100 times the locker rent. Suppose if your locker rent is say 1000 rupees per year, then the maximum compensation one gets is only 100 times 1000. That means 1 lakh rupee compensation one can receive it. So it is 100 times the locker rent. And very important point that needs to be understood very clearly is the contents inside the locker is not insured by the bank, nor banks directly can promote any insurance policy to cover the contents inside the locker. As I said in the opening, banks are not aware of what is kept inside or what is taken outside. No record is maintained for that. There is absolutely restricted to offer any kinds of insurance on the contents kept inside. That means the items kept inside has no insurance coverage. Though banks will take a general insurance policy for the safety of the branches and other premises. The third aspect is closure and settlement. If for any reasons, if the customers want to close their locker or surrender their locker during this year, they can do so, and the original key handed over to them by the bank should be handed over to them, and rent will be taken only proportionate charges. Balance amount will be refunded to the customer along with the deposit taken as advance will also be closed as per the instructions of the locker heir. In case of unfortunate death, if there is a nomination in the locker, the items kept inside will be handed over to the nominee, or if it is without nomination, as per the claim settlement policy in vogue at the branch. These are the new guidelines which will be coming into operation from 1st of January 2022. If you think this is useful, please subscribe to our YouTube channel Rajendran Sivarama Pillai. Thank you very much.